Today, we discard any meal that isn't perfect. But for thousands in old Australia, dinner was built from the scraps we now call garbage. A vacuum of extreme isolation, unrelenting droughts, and economic collapse left families with nothing. The landscape offered no margin for error or hunger. People relied on survival meals so desperate and shameful that they actively hid their plates from neighbors to protect what little pride they had left. In this world, wasting a single moldy bread crust or a smear of animal fat was viewed as an immoral act. Mornings began without fresh eggs or butter. Instead, families meticulously saved every drop of meat dripping and hardened grease from previous days in small tin cans. Laborers spread that cold fat between slices of stale bread to create dripping sandwiches. They carried these into mines and onto rail jobs because the grease wouldn't spoil in the punishing Australian heat. Taste was irrelevant. These meals functioned as a strict caloric calculation, providing the raw energy needed to keep a body functioning through 12 hours of physical labor. Every mouthful functioned as a biological maintenance protocol, designed solely to prevent a human body from shutting down during the workday. When real meat vanished from the table, parents were forced to use sensory tricks to make their families feel safe and satiated. They gathered animal bones and boiled them for hours. While the broth might contain 0 fragments of actual meat, the presence of heat and salt helped the body feel tricked into a state of security. To mimic the flavor of a roast, they intentionally charred onions in a pan until they were black. Adding water and flour created a dark, smoky gravy that provided the psychological illusion of a traditional meal. In coastal settlements, the heads, tails, and spines of fish were boiled into pungent stews. The appearance was foul, but in a survival vacuum, protein is simply protein. Maintaining these small rituals of dinner was a critical strategy for psychological survival. The burden was heaviest for parents trying to feed children before school, in towns where fresh milk and produce were completely inaccessible. They relied on dense, heavy carbohydrates, like fried flour cakes and stale biscuit mash, to physically stop stomach pains. In many homes, children ate bread soaked in black tea, simply because there was nothing else to soften the crusts. To provide a rare moment of happiness, parents gathered discarded bread crusts to bake into puddings, or simply sprinkled pinches of sugar over buttered bread. For a child facing crushing poverty, that brief hit of sweetness functioned as an emotional survival strategy against the weight of their surroundings. As the droughts worsened, the definition of food expanded into literal trash. Families saved potato peels and boiled them in salted water to create thin, gray soups that offered just enough volume to fill a stomach. Even tea leaves were dried and reused for days, producing progressively weaker, transparent cups of liquid as a way to save a few final pennies. When total starvation becomes a brutal daily reality for these families, the dividing line between garbage and dinner disappears entirely. The final stage of desperation was garbage stew, a single pot containing a week's worth of accumulated fat drippings, wilted vegetable ends, and stale bread. Every family had their own variation, but a silent rule persisted. You never asked what was floating in the bowl. These horrifying scrap meals weren't eaten once during a sudden crisis. Families relied on them for unbroken weeks and months at a time. The true legacy of this era is how quickly the human mind can accept the unthinkable as a normal way to live. These forgotten survival foods prove that humans will find a way to endure even the most total economic collapse and geographic isolation. Their ultimate survival wasn't bought with luxury, but through a gritty, desperate form of creativity. Look at these meals and ask yourself, which of them shocked you the most? And could you actually survive on that diet?